So it's a relationship that has been increasing a lot in the past, I would say, 2 decades, mainly along the lines of energy cooperation, because this is a pillar of the relationship. China has for priority to secure access to energy sources, and Gulf countries have for priority to secure market access, and China is one of the biggest importer of their energy. So there is a big element around the energy security, the energy relationship. But we've seen also developing of the relationship in many of the fields in recent years, in terms of technology, in terms of also renewable energies. We've seen the political relationship developing a lot, and to some extent as well, a beginning of security relations developing. So this is, for Gulf countries, this is taking place in a broader context where they are trying to diversify their relations away from their traditional Western partners. There is a context of the fact that their economic prosperity is going to be increasingly linked to Asian powers and to securing access for exports of energy resources to these countries. But there is also the more, I would say, political or security dimension, which is the evolution of their security relations with their traditional partners, and especially the US, and how Gulf countries have been increasingly trying to attain certain strategic autonomy and trying to diversify a bit the relations with different partners. And China has been one piece of that evolution among many others. They've been reaching out to countries like Russia, but also India, Japan, Korea for the economic part as well. So it's not just about China. It's about a broader trend of diversifying their ties. There are some differences between GCC countries from the economic perspective. So I would say for Saudi Arabia, it's a lot, for all of them, it's a lot about still energy, because it's still an important component of all of their economies. For Saudi Arabia, which is like the big heavyweight of the region in terms of energy exports, the energy dimension is very strong. For the UAE, which is probably the country among the GCC that has diversified its economy the best, it has a more also diversified economic relationship with China. And so it goes a bit beyond, that's one of the Gulf countries that has developed the tech relation with China a bit better. We've seen during the pandemic also in terms of health cooperation. So in the UAE, there is a bit more diversified approach, economically speaking, to China. And each GCC country has a different, I would say, in terms of energy exports, they have, of course, they're differently dependent on China. Actually, the UAE, its main energy importer is not China, it's Japan. Oman is very dependent on China when it comes to exporting its energy resources. Qatar is always a bit of a different case study because Qatar exports LNG, so it's not exactly the same dimension that for other Gulf countries. But yeah, so you have like very different perspectives. The UAE has also a very strong port and re-export element towards the broader MENA and Africa region as well of imports coming from China. So they all have a bit of different economic ties with China. So there has been some frictions emerging in recent years, mainly from the US side originally. They have tended to securitize some of these economic relations that Gulf states have with China. So they have securitized a lot the tech cooperation that Gulf countries have with China. They have securitized the infrastructure question, especially access to ports. And more recently during COVID as well, the question of cooperation on health. So, and Gulf countries have been trying to resist that, and they don't want to be forced into having to take sides just because the US is having a rivalry with China. They don't want to be caught in the middle, because for them, their security priorities continue to lie in the US because the US is remaining their main security partner. But increasingly, their economic security is going to be in Asia and a lot in China as well. So, but we're seeing, for example, on the 5G question, this has been one of the elements where the US has been pressuring a lot Gulf countries recently, without success actually, because all of the GCC countries have developed relations with Huawei for at least part of their 5G networks. But this is something that we see emerging increasingly, and that is going to be complicated for Gulf countries to navigate.